Check out my Corvette classification guide via the description below. To provide a quick overview, Corvettes should be designed to escort and screen fleets against fighters, bombers and other small attack craft. They carry high fire rate weaponry and are quick enough to keep up with fighter craft. Imagine a lone cruiser or frigate coasting through space. A competent squadron of fighters and bombers can do serious damage or even disable the ship. Now imagine the same scenario, but with 2 to 3 Corvette escorts. 1 or 2 can move to screening positions, with the other hanging back to protect the main vessel. You've now gone from easy pickings to a very difficult formation to attack. That's the power of escorts and corvettes. Generally speaking, corvettes should be among the smallest large grid warships found within a fleet composition. They sit between gunships and frigates, the size often contributing to their speed and ability to quickly move up fleet columns to block incoming attacks and screen larger vessels. Quick firing, high velocity weapons are best suited to corvettes. This allows them to provide large volume fire against smaller and usually lightly armoured targets. Gatling guns are the most basic weaponry for a corvette. You can't go wrong having a few of these scattered around the hull to offer basic coverage. They can be paired with a welder repair system to keep them active and will provide a steady stream of fire with medium accuracy at range. The next option, and by far the most powerful, are custom turrets with multiple autocannons or Gatling guns. Autocannons trade projectile volume for damage, hitting harder when they connect and more effectively cutting through armour. Clustering 4 to 8 autocannons on a custom turret can offset some of the downsides in fire rate. Gatling gun custom turrets are great for throwing a high volume of rounds downrange and providing suppressive fire. They are great against torpedoes and missiles, though often don't have the damage output to take out larger craft before they fly past. It can be useful to equip corvettes with some form of ship-to-ship weaponry. You may find an opening in a fleet engagement to take pot shots, and it can improve the ability and capacity for conducting solo missions. It would also allow them to provide artillery fire against ground and fixed targets. The cheapest and easiest option is to throw in a couple of assault cannon turrets. They deal okay damage against larger ships and are durable. If they do manage to connect with any smaller ships, they will do considerable damage. Missile turrets are the more expensive option, but can actually be surprisingly effective even against smaller targets. You'll want to protect these well though, as the ammunition is expensive, and if the turret goes down, you've got a lot of useless explosive ammo on board. You could couple this with some fixed rocket pods to help maximise the ammo. These are generally useless against small and agile craft and serve best for opening salvos against larger ships. So if that's something you anticipate encountering often, then it might be the right choice for you. I touched on these in my fighter video, but they are generally very useful for adding custom weapons, booster pods or deploying decoys and mines. These can be as simple as building a couple of merge blocks into your hull, or even a large grid small connector now. Making them protrude from the hull will give torpedoes more clearance and make it easier to deploy mines as well, but in general they take up little to no room on the hull, make the ship look more interesting and allow for large amounts of flexibility for various mission loadouts, so because of this I don't really see any reason to not include hardpoints. Most fighters and small grids are going to have a tough time getting through large blocks and damaging systems from strafing runs. With this in mind, and with the fact that we want corvettes to be quick and able to keep up, light armour is best. Of course, there are exceptions for heavy corvettes or assault variants, but in general we want to focus on their speed and screening abilities. I recommend doing what you can to wrap the hull in at least a layer of light armour, using half block panels if necessary. This gives you a base level of protection which isn't great, but it's better than nothing. Identify any critical areas and weak points to reinforce. You can of course swap the light armour with some heavy armour, but you can also add decoys to pull fire away from these areas, or add some spaced armour to offer improved protection. There is no reason for a Corvette to be fully self-sufficient. The blocks required, such as a refinery, assembler and vast cargo storage, would simply detract from the vessel's primary function. I would, however, recommend a medical room as it offers a faster recharge rate than a survival kit. I would also recommend taking some spare components for repairs on the fly. A jump drive can be a useful feature, but generally for my Corvette, I'm not bothered about always cramming one in. If needs be, they can dock to a larger vessel for a jump. However, if your Corvettes will be conducting solo missions often, or your fleets are smaller and it's acting as a lead vessel, jump drives would be useful. Power systems on your Corvette should scale with thruster output, and also take into consideration whether or not you're packing a jump drive. Generally speaking, a solid layout would be 1 to 2 small reactors plus a battery array. If you have the available space, I would also recommend a backup engine or a charged battery that's switched off to run basic systems in an emergency. The reason I choose reactors is that if you're fielding large grid warships, you should have a supply of all available ores at your disposal already. Uranium is the best long-term fuel source for these vessels. A hydrogen backup is a solid option, as if you get stranded or stuck, many asteroids have ice that you can use to power the ship temporarily, given you have the O2H2 generators on board. Something quite important to consider is your vessel's thruster type. Hydrogen offers the higher power, which is what we're looking for, however it requires the onboard storage of explosive fuel, and thrusters can be disabled if the fuel lines are severed during combat, rendering them useless. Ion thrusters can be dotted across a hull and don't require fuel, however they are expensive to produce and aren't as powerful as hydrogen thrusters. Thinking about a Corvette's strengths and purpose, it would make the most sense to use a blend of both. Hydrogen are the best primary thrusters as they will allow the ship to catch up with smaller craft and run them down. I would focus on hydrogen thrusters for your forward thrust so you can quickly engage threats, then I recommend having hybrid thrust in all other directions. Strong lateral thrust is also an advantage for strafing. There is an argument about reversing thrust, but as Corvettes should be small and light, simply rotating the ship according to how you want to adjust velocity will suffice. Corvettes will be hunting small, fast targets. Due to this, consider adding a radar script of some sort to keep track of enemy locations easily. Cameras are also very useful. The top-mounted camera can be easily dotted across a ship's hull for redundancy. The regular camera should be reinforced with some glass casings, as they are a block that's often shot off early in the fight. Cameras are also useful for docking or zooming in on points of interest, so consider adding them around your hull to improve general visibility. I generally wouldn't recommend building hangars in Corvettes unless they will frequently be the largest present ship in conflicts. Even then, landing pads are more space efficient and provide faster launches. Leave carrying fighters to the ships designed to do so, and those large enough where a hangar won't detract from their main function. The exception to this is assault corvettes. Here you may wish to bring a couple of strike bombers or similar craft, which I would deem acceptable, but even here it's not absolutely necessary. Drones can be much smaller and easier to carry, so potentially equipping a Corvette with a couple of drones for scouting isn't a terrible idea. Again, if it's the case that your Corvettes will be flying solo often, you might want to look into this. I'd say the best option is to either leave it, or if you do use shuttles for transfers frequently, have a single external landing pad to facilitate this. Typically, your Corvettes will be manned by in-game 1 to 3 people, frequently only by 1, so the interior doesn't need to be lavishly equipped, but there are some rooms that are worth considering in your design. As is the case with pretty much all large grid warships, you'll want a backup cockpit or CIC somewhere other than a bridge if you have one. Bridges will be targeted and destroyed quickly if exposed, and are generally one of the first structures to go. If you can't cram a backup in, you can double layer the glass, or blend some armour into the glass to make the design more durable. A well laid out, efficient and quick to access engineering section will be very useful to have, allowing you to quickly throw more uranium into a reactor, activate a backup engine, or make repairs during combat. Component storage or cargo access. You'll want easy access to either shelves containing components for repairs, or the ship's cargo system to pull components out. Shelves are quite easy to dot around the ship. Simply select the type of shelf containing the components of the nearest major system and squeeze 1 or 2 in. Freight boxes with these components are another easy option. Sometimes these can be more effective than the ship's cargo system, as if conveyor lines are severed or power fails, you'll lose access to everything. Crew quarters, while mostly visual, do help the look and feel of the ship. Beds are very useful to have on board as well. Just for a bit of fun, let's explore some common Corvette variants and how their design makes each of them unique. The Heavy Corvette. Fairly simple, these focus more on durability with improved armour protection, system redundancy, and usually heavier weaponry to boot. These come with the downside of less speed and manoeuvrability. Heavy Corvettes are effective for solo missions with their high survivability and damage output, but generally will play more of a frigate role within a fleet, as due to their mass they'll burn through fuel much more quickly in combat and won't be as fast as their lighter cousins. Assault Corvette. Primarily used for attacks on stations and bases, assault corvettes will focus their armament on high volume forward firepower, such as rocket pods, dumbfire torpedoes and artillery cannons. Their role would differ slightly, so during an attack on a station, assault corvettes can move in first, using their speed to evade returning fire, then strategically bombarding key areas with their forward weaponry, such as turret emplacements, fuel storage or grounded vehicles. Light Corvette. Light corvettes have less armour and firepower and are generally used as cheap and basic deterrents against probing attacks and pirates. The presence of a warship, even a light one, escorting a freighter is the difference between a couple of fighters being able to easily steal cargo and putting them off entirely. They are also cheap to maintain and run, making them good for station guarding. Interceptor Corvettes. Interceptor corvettes are much the same, typically stored at stations featuring strong forward thrust to quickly deploy and take out incoming threats. Due to their short range nature, they won't need as much fuel, a jump drive or large caliber weapons, so they should focus mainly on lighter, fast firing weapons with solid coverage across the hull to quickly shred incoming fighters. Redundancy is a critical factor in warship design across the board. Wherever possible, you want multiple of any critical systems located in different areas of the ship. For example, batteries for power are easy to dot around a vessel so they can't be destroyed all at once. Gyros can also be strewn about a vessel and also act as very strong armour. Turret priorities can be configured depending on the threat you're facing. For example, if you're working alongside a frigate or larger vessel and engaging another large vessel plus fighter craft, you may want to focus your turrets on small grids only to screen your frigate while they hit the larger target. This was my Corvette design guide. If it helped you out, please leave a like and comment to support the series and help me create more content like this. And as always, take care, everybody.